The countdown timer hit 72 hours, and I watched it from the courthouse bathroom floor, my white dress crumpled around me like a surrender flag. Sterling had just posted it, big, red, digital numbers ticking down on his Instagram story, with a simple caption, "Apologize for being selfish, or we're done." This wasn't the first time he'd weaponized social media against me. Last month, it was a poll. Should Penelope quit nagging me about date nights? 30,000 strangers voted. 83% said yes. The month before that, he live-streamed me crying after a miscarriage, saying I was being dramatic about something that wasn't even a real baby yet. His followers ate it up, called me weak, called me ungrateful. But this was different, because 2 hours ago, I was supposed to be his wife. I'd been sitting on those courthouse steps since 9 a.m., bouquet in hand, waiting for Sterling to show up for our civil ceremony. He never came. Instead, he posted a photo from the hospital. Him and Lila, his best friend, her hand wrapped in gauze, both of them smiling. The caption, "Family first, the paper can wait." When I commented asking where he was, he didn't call, he didn't text. He started the countdown. 72 hours to apologize for being selfish, enough to expect my own fiancé to show up to our wedding. The comments poured in instantly. "She's so needy." He dodged a bullet. "Lila's way hotter anyway." And I sat there, mascara running, watching strangers destroy me in real time while Sterling racked up likes. But here's what Sterling didn't know. While he was playing Instagram games, I was sitting across from Richard Vance, CEO of the rival law firm that had been trying to poach me for 3 years. I'd walked straight from those courthouse steps, still in my wedding dress, into his office. The offer was simple: full equity partnership, $200,000 salary, and complete autonomy. "I accept," I told him, my voice steady. "And I'm bringing 50 million in clients with me." Richard smiled, slid the contract across his desk, and shook my hand. As we signed, my phone buzzed. Sterling's countdown, 71:47:22. He thought I'd be on my knees by hour 48, begging him to take me back, promising to be a better, quieter, more obedient version of myself. Instead, I pulled off my engagement ring, dropped it in the courthouse trash can, and made one decision. I was going to let that timer hit 0, and when it did, Sterling was going to learn that the woman he'd been humiliating for views, the woman he'd trained 50,000 followers to mock, the woman he'd left at the altar for a staged hospital visit with his mistress. She wasn't just the lawyer who'd built his entire empire. She was the only reason it existed at all. Let the countdown begin. Because while he was busy performing for an audience, I was quietly dismantling everything he thought he owned. 72 hours. He had no idea how much a person could destroy in 72 hours. The first thing I did when I got home was turn off my phone notifications. Not because I didn't want to see Sterling's countdown. I did, actually. I wanted to watch every single second tick down. But I needed him to think I'd gone silent out of fear, out of shame. I needed him to believe that I was somewhere, curled up in a ball, panicking about losing him. The truth? I was in our home office, methodically packing 5 years of my life into bankers' boxes. And I'd never felt more clear-headed in my entire life. Sterling, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. I checked his Instagram from my laptop, logged into a burner account I'd created years ago when I first suspected something was off. He was posting every 6 hours like clockwork. Hour 68, still no apology. Pride is expensive, Penelope. A photo of him and Lila at brunch, her laughing at something on his phone. The comments were brutal. She's probably crying into her pillow iron. Imagine fumbling a king like Sterling. Lila is literally right there, bro. Upgrade complete. His engagement was through the roof. Brands were even starting to comment, trying to ride the viral wave. He was eating this up. The attention, the power, the control. But what Sterling didn't know, what he couldn't know because he'd never actually paid attention to how his own business ran, was that I had access to everything. Every client file, every contract, every email thread. See, I wasn't just his fiancée. I wasn't even just his business partner. I was the person who ran Sterling Law while he played celebrity lawyer on Instagram. And over the past 5 years, I'd been meticulous. I'd kept copies of every single case I'd worked on, every client I'd brought in, every late-night brief I'd written while Sterling was out, networking with Lila. I had proof, documentation, a digital paper trail that showed exactly who'd built that firm. So while Sterling posted his 50-hour update, a video of him at the gym, flexing, with the caption, "Unbothered, focused," thriving, I was in his office, logged into the company server for the last time. I downloaded everything: client contact information, case files, settlement records, communications logs. I even found the folder where he'd saved all his Sterling Solo Wins press releases, the ones I'd written, the cases I'd won, with his face plastered on every headline. I burned it all onto 3 separate hard drives, encrypted each one, and tucked them into my purse. By the time the sun came up, I'd erased every trace of my access. To anyone looking, it would seem like I'd simply logged in to grab my personal files before leaving. Routine. Clean. Legal. The last thing I did before I left that house was stand in the doorway of our bedroom and look at the life I'd built with him. The furniture I'd picked out. The photos on the wall, mostly of him, a few of us, none of just me. The closet where half my clothes were still shoved into the smaller side because Sterling needed space for his brand wardrobe. And I felt nothing. No sadness. No nostalgia. Just a cold, calculated clarity. I grabbed my suitcase, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. By hour 48, I was checked into a boutique hotel downtown, and Sterling still thought I was somewhere, trembling, waiting for his forgiveness. What he didn't know was that in 24 hours, his entire world was going to collapse, and I was going to be the one holding the detonator. I started with Marcus Chen, CEO of Goliath Tech, our biggest client, $30 million in annual retainer fees alone. I'd met Marcus 6 years ago at a legal conference, back when Sterling was still trying to convince people he was more than just a pretty face with a law degree his daddy bought. Marcus and I had clicked instantly. We spoke the same language: efficiency, results, no bullshit. Over the years, every single contract negotiation, every patent dispute, every regulatory nightmare that Goliath faced, that was me. Sterling would show up for the final handshake, smile for the photo op, and take the credit. But Marcus knew. He'd always known. So when I walked into his corner office at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, exactly 48 hours into Sterling's little countdown, Marcus didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "Penelope," he said, standing up from his desk, "I was wondering when you'd finally leave that clown." I didn't waste time with small talk. I pulled out my tablet, opened the proposal Richard Vance and I had drafted at midnight, and slid it across his desk. "I'm starting fresh. New firm, same dedication, better terms. I can offer you everything Sterling did, except this time you'll actually be working with the person who does the work." Marcus skimmed the contract for maybe 30 seconds before he reached for his pen. "Where do I sign?" "1 down, 2 to go." Next was Vivian Torres, founder of Torres Pharmaceuticals, 43 years old, self-made billionaire, and someone who'd once told me over drinks that she only tolerated Sterling because I was the one actually reading her contracts. Vivian had a personal rule. She didn't do business with incompetent men who wasted her time. Sterling had violated that rule approximately 700 times, but I'd always smoothed it over. When I called her that afternoon, she answered on the first ring. "Let me guess," she said, not even saying hello. "You finally woke up." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in days. "I'm starting my own firm. I'd love for you to come with me." There was a pause. Then, "Email me the paperwork." I'll have my assistant transfer everything by Monday morning. The third client was the hardest, Jonathan Price. Old money, old school, and someone who genuinely liked Sterling, or at least liked the idea of Sterling. The charming young attorney from a good family, the one who played golf at the country club and knew which fork to use at donor dinners. But Jonathan was also a pragmatist, and when I sat across from him in his study that evening, I didn't appeal to friendship, I appealed to his wallet. Jonathan, in the last 3 years, I've saved you $42 million in avoided litigation and settlement reductions. Sterling has attended 4 of your cases. I've handled 23. I slid a folder across his mahogany desk, a side-by-side comparison of every case, every outcome, every hour billed. Jonathan read in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then he closed the folder, looked at me with those shrewd gray eyes, and said, I always knew you were the smart one. By the time I got back to my hotel room that night, it was nearly midnight. Sterling's countdown was at 26 hours. He'd just posted a new update, a video of him and Lila at some rooftop bar, clinking champagne glasses. The caption, 26 hours left, still no apology. Guess pride really is more important than love. The comments were worse than ever, but I didn't care. Because sitting on my hotel bed were 3 signed contracts, representing 80% of Sterling Law's revenue. I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started drafting the legal notice that would be delivered to Sterling in exactly 26 hours. And as I typed, I couldn't help but smile. He thought he was counting down to my surrender. He had no idea he was counting down to his funeral. Sterling went live at exactly midnight. I watched from my hotel room, glass of wine in hand, as 53,000 people tuned in to watch what he'd been calling the reckoning in his stories all day. He was in our living room, his living room now, I guess, wearing a crisp white button-down, hair perfectly styled, ring light positioned just right. He looked like he was about to sell me a cryptocurrency scam. All right, everyone, he said, flashing that smile that used to make my stomach flip. It's been 72 hours. The countdown is over. And Penelope, she made her choice. The comments exploded. She fumbled. Lila won. This is brutal, Lelem. Oh. He stood up, started pacing like he was delivering a closing argument. Except his audience wasn't a jury. It was thousands of strangers who'd spent 3 days learning to hate me. You know what the saddest part is, he continued, shaking his head with this practiced look of disappointment. I gave her every opportunity. 72 hours to just apologize, to admit she was being selfish, to show me she actually cared about us more than her ego. He paused for effect, looked directly into the camera, but she couldn't do it. So Penelope, if you're watching this, and I know you are, consider this official. You're done. Done with me. Done with Sterling Law. You're fired from my life and my business. The comments were a feeding frenzy. Yo, he really did it. She's probably crying RN, cold-blooded. Sterling was eating it up, scrolling through the reactions on his phone, reading some out loud. Someone said, she'll regret this for the rest of her life. Yeah, probably. He laughed. That's when I heard it. Even through the phone screen. A doorbell. Sterling froze mid-laugh, confused. Hold on, guys, he said, walking toward the door, phone still pointed at his face. Oh, who the hell is ringing my doorbell at midnight? The comments started speculating. It's her. She came crawling back, OMG. This is better than Netflix. Sterling opened the door, still live, still smiling, and the smile died instantly. It wasn't me. It was a man in a gray suit holding a manila envelope. Sterling Whitmore, the man asked, his voice professional and bored. Yeah, Sterling said slowly, the confidence draining from his face. You've been served? The man handed him the envelope and walked away. just like that. Sterling stood there in the doorway, 53,000 people watching, as he tore open the envelope with shaking hands. I watched his eyes scan the first page, then the second. Then he looked up at the camera, and for the first time in 3 days, he wasn't performing anymore. He was scared. What is this? He muttered, more to himself than the audience, but I could see the header from where the camera was angled. Notice of partnership dissolution and civil claim for workplace harassment. The comments shifted instantly. Wait, what's happening? Is this real? Plot twist. Sterling's face went pale. He tried to recover, tried to laugh it off. This is just Penelope being petty, guys. She's mad because... But his voice cracked. The live chat was moving too fast to read now. People were confused. People were turning on him. Bro, you're getting sued on a live stream. Someone screen recorded it. Someone else tagged a legal commentary account. Sterling ended the live abruptly. Just gone, black screen. But the damage was done. In the span of 5 minutes, he'd gone from confident executioner to publicly humiliated defendant, and the entire internet had watched it happen in real time. I set my phone down, finished my wine, and checked my email. Richard Vance had sent me a message 10 minutes ago. All 3 clients confirmed. Transfer paperwork filed. Welcome to the firm, partner. I smiled, closed my laptop, and went to bed. Because tomorrow morning, when Sterling woke up and actually read that lawsuit, when he realized what I'd taken from him, when he understood that his 72-hour power play had cost him everything, that's when the real countdown would begin. And this time, I'd be the one watching him fall apart, second by second, with nowhere left to run. Sterling called me 47 times between midnight and 8 a.m. I know because I watched every single call come through, watched his name light up my screen over and over again, and I let every single one go to voicemail. By the time Monday morning hit, he'd left 16 voicemails. The first few were angry, accusing me of being vindictive, of trying to ruin him, of forgetting who built that firm. By voicemail number 9, his tone changed. He was confused, scared. Penelope, what is this lawsuit? We can talk about this. Just call me back. By voicemail 16, recorded at 6:53 a.m., he was crying. Actually crying. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any of it. The countdown was just for engagement, you know that. Baby, please pick up. I deleted all of them without listening past the first 10 seconds. Because at exactly 9 a.m., I was walking into my new office at Hart & Vance. Excuse me, Hart, Vance & Associates now, with my name going on the letterhead by end of week, and I had 3 client calls scheduled. Meanwhile, Sterling was walking into Sterling Law, and from what my former assistant Michelle told me later, the scene was biblical. The lobby was empty. Not just quiet, empty. No receptionist, no assistants buzzing around, no coffee brewing in the break room. Michelle had texted me at 8:30. Everyone's talking. Half the staff didn't show up. The ones who did are packing their desks. The first call came at 9:15, Sterling's personal line. I knew because Michelle was CC'd on the firm's phone system, and she was forwarding me everything in real time. It was Marcus Chen, CEO of Goliath Tech, Sterling's biggest client, his former biggest client. According to Michelle, she could hear Sterling through his office door. Marcus, I don't understand. We've worked together for 6 years. What do you mean Penelope is your attorney now? A pause. No, Marcus, wait. She didn't handle all of it. I was heavily involved in... Another pause. Longer this time. Then, that's not true. That's not... Marcus, don't do this. We can renegotiate the terms. I'll personally... The line went dead. Michelle said Sterling threw his phone across the room. The second call came at 10:03. Vivian Torres. I could picture her perfectly. sitting in her glass-walled office, surrounded by her executive team, probably filing her nails while she delivered the kill shot. Sterling tried to be charming, tried to remind her of all the work we'd done together. Vivian, according to the email she sent me right after, told him, "Sterling, I haven't worked with you a single day in my life. I worked with Penelope. You were just the expensive middleman." She terminated the contract effective immediately, cited the 30-day escape clause I'd written into the original agreement 3 years ago, the one Sterling never actually read, and hung up before he could respond. By 11 a.m., Jonathan Price called, and that one broke him, because Jonathan didn't yell, didn't gloat. He was just disappointed, like a father watching his son fail. "Sterling, I'm going to be honest with you," Jonathan said, his voice calm and measured. "I stayed with your firm because of Penelope. She was brilliant, organized, and she genuinely cared about my family's legacy. You showed up to play golf and drink my scotch." Sterling tried to interrupt, but Jonathan kept going. "I'm 76 years old, son. I don't have time for egos. My business is going where the competence is, and that's not you." Click. Michelle sent me one final message at 2 p.m. He's sitting in his office with the lights off. 3 more clients called to terminate. The paralegals are fighting over who gets to leave first. It's a sinking ship, Penn. You didn't just take the clients. You took the entire firm. I read her message, poured myself a coffee from my brand new espresso machine in my brand new corner office, and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere across town, Sterling was watching his empire collapse in real time, finally understanding that the woman he'd humiliated, the woman he'd fired on a live stream, the woman he'd given 72 hours to apologize. She wasn't just his partner, she was the entire foundation. And without me, Sterling Law wasn't a law firm. It was just a man with a nice smile and an empty office, wondering how everything fell apart so fast. Lila called me on Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer, blocked number, but something told me to pick up. "Penelope?" Her voice was shaky, almost apologetic. I need to talk to you. It's about Sterling." I leaned back in my office chair, already knowing where this was going. "I'm listening." There was a long pause. Then, "He's making me take over your cases. All of them. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm only 2 years out of law school. I've never handled corporate litigation. And he's screaming at me because I can't." She stopped, and I heard her crying. "Penelope, I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't know he was going to..." I hung up. Not because I was angry. Because she'd made her bed, and now she was going to sleep in it. What Lila didn't tell me, but what I found out later from Michelle, who was still feeding me intel like a Cold War spy, was that Sterling was desperate. With 90% of his client base gone, he was left with scraps, a handful of small cases, a few personal injury claims, one mid-level corporate client who hadn't gotten the memo yet. But he couldn't handle them himself. See, Sterling had spent the last 5 years being the face while I did the work. He didn't know how to file a motion, didn't know how to draft a discovery request, could barely navigate the electronic court filing system. So he did what any narcissist would do. He shoved it all onto Lila and told her to figure it out. The disaster came on Wednesday. Lila had a preliminary hearing for the one remaining corporate client, a software company called Helix Digital, represented by Sterling Law in a breach of contract dispute. It should have been routine. Show up, present the timeline, request a continuance to gather more evidence. 15 minutes, tops. Except Lila showed up to the wrong courthouse. She'd gotten the address mixed up, didn't double-check the filing, and by the time she realized her mistake and got to the right building, she was 45 minutes late. The judge was not happy. According to the court transcript Michelle got her hands on, Judge Ramirez opened with, "Ms. Chen, this is the 3rd time this month Sterling Law has shown disrespect for this court's time. Where is Mr. Whitmore?" Lila stammered through some excuse about Sterling being indisposed with other matters, which was code for hiding in his office spiraling. Then she tried to present the case, and oh God, it was painful. She mixed up the dates, claimed the breach happened in March when it was actually January. She cited the wrong contract section. She couldn't answer basic questions about the discovery timeline because she hadn't actually read the file. Judge Ramirez finally stopped her mid-sentence. Ms. Chen, have you ever handled a case of this magnitude before? Lila went silent. The judge didn't wait for an answer. This court finds Sterling Law in contempt for gross negligence and failure to provide adequate representation. You're fined $100,000, payable within 30 days. Motion to compel is granted. Next case. Lila called Sterling from the courthouse steps, and Michelle said she could hear him screaming through the phone from 3 offices away. You did what? $100,000? Are you kidding me, Lila? She tried to explain, tried to tell him that she'd asked for help, that she'd told him she wasn't ready, but Sterling didn't want to hear it. I gave you one job. One. And you couldn't even show up on time. Michelle said Lila came back to the office in tears, packed her desk, and quit on the spot. But before she left, she turned to Sterling, who was standing in the hallway, red-faced and furious, and said something that apparently made him go silent. You told me you were the genius. You said Penelope was just the support system. But she was the whole damn operation, wasn't she? And now, you have nothing. She walked out, and Sterling was left standing in an empty hallway of an empty office, with a 6-figure fine he couldn't pay, a reputation in free fall, and the sinking realization that Lila wasn't the problem. I was never the problem. He was. He'd always been the problem. And now, with no one left to blame, no one left to hide behind, no audience left to perform for, he was finally going to have to face the truth. He wasn't a lawyer. He was just a man with a blue checkmark in an empty building, and the clock was still ticking. He showed up at my office on Thursday morning with a mariachi band. I'm not kidding. A full mariachi band, sombreros, trumpets, guitars, the whole thing, standing in the lobby of Hart, Vance and Associates, playing some dramatic love song while Sterling stood in the center, holding a bouquet of roses the size of a small child. Our receptionist, Diane, called my extension with barely concealed laughter in her voice. Penelope, you need to see this." I walked out to the lobby, coffee in hand, and just stopped. 50 people had gathered, employees from other firms in the building, delivery drivers, random people from the street. Everyone had their phones out, filming, because of course they were. Sterling had probably tipped off some gossip blog before he even got here. The second he saw me, he dropped to one knee. The mariachi band hit a dramatic crescendo. "Penelope," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, his voice dripping with that performative sincerity he'd perfected over the years. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life." He gestured to the band, the flowers, the crowd, this whole countdown thing. It was just a social media experiment, engagement content. I was trying to make our relationship exciting, to build hype for our wedding, but it went too far, and His voice cracked on cue. "I love you. I can't lose you. Please, baby. Come back to me. Come back to Sterling Law. We built that together. It's ours." I took a sip of my coffee and let him sit there on his knee for a good 10 seconds while I just stared at him. The crowd was eating it up. Some people were filming, some were whispering, a few were actually tearing up like this was some romantic movie moment. Then I smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile you give someone when you're about to end their whole career. "Sterling," I said, my voice calm and clear, "you fired me on Instagram Live in front of 53,000 people. You said, and I quote, 'You're done with me and my business.' Remember?" His face flickered, just for a second, with panic. But he recovered fast, shaking his head like I'd misunderstood. No, that was just..." That was heat of the moment. You know how live streams are, I cut him off. So you didn't mean it when you told the entire internet I was selfish, that I cared more about my ego than our relationship, that I was fired from your life and your firm. The crowd had gone quiet now. People were starting to look at Sterling differently, starting to realize this wasn't a romantic gesture. This was damage control. Sterling stood up slowly, the roses drooping in his hands. He tried to step closer, lowering his voice like we were having a private conversation, even though 20 phones were still recording. Penelope, come on. Don't do this here. Let's go somewhere private and talk. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. I'll make you senior partner. I'll give you 70% of the profits. Hell, I'll put your name first on the building. He reached for my hand, and I stepped back. Sterling, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I don't want your apology. I don't want your flowers. And I definitely don't want to go back to a firm that's bleeding money, losing clients, and currently facing a $100,000 contempt fine because you handed my cases to someone who doesn't know the difference between a deposition and a subpoena. His jaw tightened. The mask was slipping. You took my clients, Penelope. You destroyed everything I built, I corrected. You were just the face for Sterling. And now that the face doesn't have the brain behind it, people are finally seeing you for what you really are. I turned to walk back to my office, then paused and looked over my shoulder. Oh, and Sterling, you're trespassing. If you're not out of this building in 60 seconds, I'm calling security. The mariachi band, sensing the vibe had shifted, quietly packed up their instruments and left. Sterling stood there, roses still in hand, as the crowd dispersed, everyone whispering and reviewing their footage. He looked at me one last time, not with love, not with regret, but with rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. And I knew right then that this wasn't over. He wasn't going to apologize and slink away quietly. He was going to fight back. And honestly, I was counting on it. The lawsuit came on Friday. I was in a client meeting when Richard knocked on my conference room door, holding a manila envelope with that look, the one lawyers get when they know shit's about to get interesting. Penelope, you've been served, he said, sliding the envelope across the table. I excused myself, opened it, and actually laughed out loud. Sterling was suing me for breach of non-compete agreement, theft of intellectual property, and tortious interference with business relationships. He was asking for $15 million in damages. The filing was 23 pages of the most desperate and poorly written legal garbage I'd ever seen. Typos, formatting errors, entire paragraphs that contradicted each other. He'd clearly written it himself. But what really got me, what made me realize just how delusional Sterling had become, was the argument. He claimed that I'd stolen his clients through manipulation and deception, that I'd violated my partnership agreement by soliciting them before my resignation was official, and that I'd destroyed his reputation through a coordinated smear campaign. The evidence he submitted? Screenshots of my LinkedIn posts announcing my new position, testimonials from clients praising my work. And, this was my favorite part, a printout of his own Instagram Live where he'd fired me, which he was now claiming was taken out of context and digitally manipulated to appear more hostile than it was. Richard read through the filing that afternoon, took off his reading glasses, and said, "This is the stupidest lawsuit I've seen in 30 years. He's going to get laughed out of court." I smiled. I know, but let him try. Because here's the thing about narcissists. They can't accept that they lost. They need to rewrite the narrative, to make themselves the victim, to find someone else to blame. Sterling couldn't live in a world where he was the reason his firm collapsed, where his own arrogance and cruelty destroyed everything. So he created a fantasy where I was the villain, and if he could just prove it in court, maybe he could salvage what was left of his image. The hearing was set for 3 weeks later. And God, I wish I could have bottled the energy in that courtroom and saved it forever. Sterling showed up in a suit that probably cost $5,000, flanked by some bargain bin attorney he'd found on Craigslist or wherever desperate lawyers advertise now. I showed up with Richard Vance, whose reputation alone made the judge sit up a little straighter. Sterling's lawyer opened with a rambling speech about loyalty and ethics, trying to paint me as some kind of corporate saboteur. Then it was our turn. Richard stood up, calm as anything, and said, "Your Honor, I'll be brief. Mr. Whitmore's claim hinges on the assertion that my client violated her non-compete agreement by soliciting clients before her resignation. But the evidence shows otherwise." He pulled out a tablet, queued up a video, and turned it toward the judge. "This is Mr. Whitmore's Instagram Live from 12 days ago, viewed by over 53,000 people. At timestamp 42 minutes, 18 seconds, he states, and I quote, 'Penelope, you're fired from my life and my business.' He then repeats this statement 4 additional times throughout the broadcast. The judge leaned forward, watching the clip. You could see Sterling on screen, confident and smug, delivering his public execution with a smile. Richard continued, "Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore terminated my client's employment publicly, unequivocally, and without cause in front of thousands of witnesses. At that moment, any non-compete agreement became void. My client did not resign. She was fired. She did not solicit clients. They chose to follow her after witnessing Mr. Whitmore's behavior and recognizing that she was the attorney who'd been representing them all along. He pulled out 3 sworn affidavits from Marcus Chen, Vivian Torres, and Jonathan Price, each one stating clearly that they'd worked exclusively with me, that Sterling had minimal involvement in their cases, and that they'd made the decision to switch firms independently after his public termination. The judge read through the affidavits in silence. Then she looked at Sterling. And I swear I saw the exact moment she lost all respect for him. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice cold, "you fired Ms. Hart on a public platform, humiliated her in front of tens of thousands of people, and then filed a lawsuit claiming she damaged your reputation." Sterling opened his mouth to respond, but she held up a hand. "This case is frivolous, lacks merit, and borders on harassment. Motion dismissed. Mr. Whitmore, you are ordered to pay Ms. Hart's legal fees in the amount of $45,000, plus court costs. And if you file another baseless lawsuit against my client, I will hold you in contempt." We walked out of that courthouse into the afternoon sun, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Sterling tried to follow us, tried to say something, maybe another apology, maybe another threat. But Richard just looked at him and said, "Don't." And Sterling stopped, because he finally understood. He'd lost, not just the case, not just the clients, not just the firm. He'd lost the narrative, the story he'd been telling himself, that he was the genius, the star, the victim. It was gone. And all that was left was the truth. He was a man who'd mistaken charm for competence, ego for talent, and Instagram likes for real power. And the woman he'd tried to destroy, she'd just walked away with everything. I didn't keep tabs on Sterling after the lawsuit. Not because I was trying to be mature or take the high road. I just genuinely stopped caring. But the internet never forgets. And what happened to Sterling over the next 6 months became the kind of cautionary tale that business podcasts and Reddit threads would dissect for years. Michelle sent me updates occasionally, usually with a, "You need to see this" text, and every single one was more pathetic than the last. Sterling Law officially filed for bankruptcy 4 months after I left. The building was foreclosed. The furniture was auctioned off. Even his custom mahogany desk, the one he used to film all his Motivational Monday videos, sold for $300 to some college kid furnishing his first apartment. But Sterling didn't disappear quietly. Oh no. He tried to pivot, tried to rebrand himself as a legal influencer and business coach. He started a YouTube channel called The Sterling Standard, where he'd give advice on entrepreneurship and personal branding. Except nobody wanted advice from a guy who'd publicly destroyed his own company and lost a lawsuit so badly the judge called it frivolous. His first video got 12,000 views, mostly people from the lawsuit drama coming to laugh at him. By video 10, he was averaging 300 views. Half the comments were just variations of, "Isn't this the guy who got destroyed by his ex?" The other half were bots. Then came the TikTok era. And God, it was sad. Sterling moved into a studio apartment in a part of town he used to make fun of, and he started posting day in the life, content and legal tips for his followers. Except his apartment was always a mess. Clothes on the floor, dishes in the sink, ring light casting harsh shadows on his face. He'd film these videos trying to look inspirational, talking about bouncing back and learning from failure. But you could see it in his eyes. He was broken. The confidence was gone. The charm had curdled into desperation. One video showed him eating ramen noodles directly from the pot, talking about staying humble. And someone commented, "Bro went from mahogany desks to Dollar Tree dinnerware." Lila, unsurprisingly, didn't stick around for the downfall. She left him about 2 weeks after the contempt fine, and by the time Sterling's bankruptcy was finalized, she was engaged to a personal trainer named Chad, who owned 3 gyms and had never heard of Instagram countdowns. I saw her post once, a photo of a diamond ring with the caption, "He showed up, every single time." The pettiness was chef's kiss. Sterling, of course, commented something passive-aggressive like, "Glad you found what you were looking for." And she blocked him within the hour. As for me, Hardy, Vance & Associates added my name to the letterhead 6 weeks after I joined. By the end of the year, I'd brought in 4 additional major clients, expanded our corporate litigation department, and was being featured in legal journals as one of the top attorneys under 40 in the state. I bought a penthouse downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, a view of the city that made me feel like I'd finally arrived. I deleted Instagram entirely, deleted Facebook, deleted everything. Because I realized I didn't need an audience. I didn't need validation from strangers. I didn't need to perform my life for likes and comments. I just needed to be good at what I did. And I was. I always had been. The last time I saw Sterling was completely by accident. I was leaving a client dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, and I saw him through the window of a coffee shop across the street. He was sitting alone with a laptop, filming something on his phone, probably another TikTok. His hair was longer, unstyled. His suit looked cheaper. He had this look on his face. Not quite sadness, not quite anger, just emptiness. Like he was going through the motions of being a person, but had forgotten why. For a split second, I thought about going in. Thought about saying something. Maybe even offering some kind of closure. But then I remembered the courthouse steps, the countdown, the Instagram live, the mariachi band, and I kept walking. Because some people don't deserve closure. Some people deserve exactly what they get. And Sterling, he got everything he earned. 6 months after the lawsuit, I was sitting in my office when an envelope arrived by courier. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, a printout of Sterling's final Instagram post before he deleted his account. It was a photo of an empty office, caption reading, "Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's gone. I'm sorry, Penelope, for everything." He'd tagged me, but since I'd deleted my account, it just floated out into the void, unanswered. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if I should feel something. Vindication, maybe, or pity. But all I felt was free. Because here's what I learned. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Sterling didn't become cruel overnight. The red flags were always there. The need for constant validation. The way he dismissed my work. The way he weaponized social media against me whenever I didn't fall in line. I just chose to ignore them because I thought love meant enduring, meant compromising, meant shrinking myself so he could feel bigger. But love isn't supposed to come with a countdown timer. It's not supposed to be a public spectacle where strangers vote on your worth. Real love doesn't make you beg. It doesn't humiliate you for engagement metrics. And it sure as hell doesn't fire you on a live stream and then act surprised when you take them seriously. Sterling lived for the likes, the comments, the performance of success. But when the audience left, when the cameras turned off, there was nothing underneath. No substance, no integrity, just a man who'd built his entire identity on other people's validation and my hard work. And when both were gone, he had nothing left. Me? I didn't need applause anymore. I had something better. I had my name on a building, my own clients, my own legacy. I had the one thing Sterling never understood. You can't fake competence. You can't Instagram filter your way through actual work. And you can't build an empire on charm alone. Eventually, people see through the performance. Eventually, the truth wins. So yeah, I let the countdown hit 0, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because the woman who sat on those courthouse steps in a white dress, watching her fiancé humiliate her for content, she's not who I am anymore. I'm the woman who walked away with 50 million in clients, who won in court, who built something real while he was busy chasing likes. Never let anyone make you count down to your own value. If they want you gone, go. And take everything you built with you. But speaking of public humiliation, my story's nothing compared to what happened to my friend at her own sister's wedding. Imagine this. You get invited to your sister's wedding, you show up in your best dress, and then you realize your seat assignment is behind a concrete pillar. Not near the back, literally behind an obstruction where you can't see the ceremony, can't be in photos, can't be seen by anyone. Why? Because your own sister thinks you're too ugly to be in the official wedding pictures. She thought she could hide you in the shadows, treat you like an embarrassment, and you just take it. But what she didn't count on was the groom's billionaire boss showing up, taking one look at the seating chart, and deciding that the reject table behind the pillar looked way more interesting than the vapid, fake people at the head table. Suddenly, the worst seat in the house became the VIP section. And the bride? Well, let's just say her perfect Instagram wedding didn't go exactly as planned.